Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I'm Bess Hawthorne and I'm so excited you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Lori Harlow. She's a mom of 2 and has 3 grandchildren. She moved from Oregon about 6.5 years ago to Moscow, and I'm really excited to hear a lot of her stories. She and her husband Jeff have been married for 42 years and have been in the ministry for about 35 years. Which usually involved having guests in her home, oftentimes for overnight stays. So she's going to tell us a lot about hospitality, but especially that, and encourage us on how to do that in our own homes when the occasion arises. So welcome, Lori.
Thank you. Well, good to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you could come today, and I'm excited to hear your take on hospitality, especially overnight guests.
Okay.
So jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself. You and your husband have been in ministry, you said, and then we'll hear some of your stories.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. We got married pretty young, 19 and 21, and quickly moved across the country from California to Illinois. And I think after about 3 months, we had a young man move into our house with us because he needed a place to stay. He said he was, coming off the streets and wanted to follow Christ. And we both just had the heart to do it. We also probably were a little young and foolish about doing it. He did bring up a really huge $500 or more phone bill. That was back in the days of long distance phone rates.
Where they counted every minute.
Exactly. And we explained the situation. The phone company forgave a lot of the bill, and we learned a lot of lessons. But over the years, we've had multiple occasions to invite someone to live with us, to help them on their walk with Christ. And we've truly never been hurt. God has always provided. And so it just seems like a natural thing to do, to share our home with others.
That's wonderful. Earlier, I did mean to read a recommendation from her daughter-in-law, Danae. She's married to her only son. You have a son and a daughter, right?
Correct, yes.
So this daughter-in-law is very special, makes another daughter and she has a couple of grandsons.
Danae has 1 son and 1 daughter. So we have a grandson and a granddaughter here.
So fun. And
it's
then a third one.
I have a granddaughter.
Another
granddaughter with our family in Arizona.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Danae says, speaking about her mother-in-law, Lori, Danae says she knows lots about hospitality from not only hosting dinners, but often having people live with them. Strangers, boarders, parents, and now my husband and I and our 2 young kids. So tell me a little bit about that. You mentioned a stranger. Well, I'm guessing he was a stranger and then you got to know him, knew he needed a spot. Boarders, were those college-age students?
We've had a couple of NSA students, but we've also had other people live with us in Oregon. We've had 2, I think, single moms who were actually pregnant when they came to live with us and really needed a place. So that was a really strong heart ministry for us for a while. I really believe if you want to ask people to carry a baby 9 months, you also need to make sure they have a place to live and a place for that baby to live. So we were privileged to have a couple single moms live with us for over a year. And then the Lord turned all our lives upside down. And we ended up moving in with my husband's parents when both of them became ill. And towards the end of their life, we lived within their home until his father and his stepmother passed away. So we took care of them and just were all one big family. And now, 3 years ago almost, our son began a master's degree program, and we have this big 2-story house in Genesee nearby, and they didn't need to worry about paying for an apartment and working and raising kids and going to school, so they moved in with us. And Danae and Jordan have been a blessing. Yes, there are 4 adults and 2 children, and we're all learning to get along together, and it has actually been amazing. I guess the biggest thing I would say about all of it is really learning to be like a duck and let things roll off your back. There's so many little everyday things that we just choose, all of us choose, not to take notice or not to
Mhm.
hold on to. Nobody
Right.
means to step on your toes.
Well, I love the Bible verse, love covers a multitude of sins.
Amen.
But I teach second grade and I tell my kids, if love can cover a multitude of sins, how much more mistakes
Exactly.
or little problems, irritations, like the Bible verse doesn't say, let love cover a multitude of sins or mistakes or irritations, but that meaning is behind it, just not being irritated and bothered by every little thing
Exactly.
is exactly what you're talking about. And I think the only way you probably could do the type of hospitality you're talking about
is having to learn what really matters and what doesn't.
Mhm.
Definitely. And over the years, we've worked a lot with the Peacemakers program, book, and Sunday school program. And one of the foundational thoughts there is that it's about trying to do conflict resolution. But one of the foundational thoughts is there reason for conflict? Is this a sin that is hurting someone's relationship with God or hurting God's glory? Or is this just we're human and somebody was tired and didn't put their socks away?
Mhm. And now you're tired and really want to snap at them about it.
Exactly. And so
make it a really big deal at night, right before you're all going to bed.
Everything is a big deal at 8:30 at night.
Oh, it is.
I think when everybody...
That should be a rule. Don't say anything until the morning or the next day. Then you'll be a lot calmer.
Right. Some things just let it go. So
Yes.
I think that has actually, that foundational thought is this isn't sin. This is all of our shortcomings or all of our human condition, and we just don't need to make a big deal about it, and giving each other a lot of grace.
Mhm.
And the amazing thing is, Danae, my plug for her, she is the most cheerful woman. She's not had her own dishes, her own linens, her own decorations, for going on almost 4 years. And she's so cheerful about it and such a team player that I want to honor her. So
That's wonderful.
She's a good example to me.
Right.
Yeah.
That is wonderful because it is a time. I know you mentioned your son just graduated recently,
Yes.
which is so exciting. So there will be a time when she has her own home and her own
Yes.
space and moves into a different phase in life. But in the meantime, taking the circumstances you're in and being cheerful in those circumstances, even very hard ones. I mean, living with you and your husband doesn't sound very hard, but like you mentioned, your parent or his parents,
Yes.
moving in, stopping all of what you were doing in your own home to move in and minister and take care of them. It's a choice to be cheerful and glad in those circumstances and feel blessed that you have that opportunity versus you really could be really grumpy and bitter about it.
You could focus on what you don't have,
Mm-hmm.
or you could step outside and look out the porch at the beautiful scenery and focus on what you do have and the incredible gifts that God's given you. And we have sat by the bedside of actually 4 parents when they passed away. We got to be there. Not easy, but
No.
I wouldn't give up a moment of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I don't know if that's hospitality or if that's Christian family, because we don't want to be isolated. We don't want to be everybody in their little tract home with their fence and their walls and their curtains and not know what's going on around us. So hopefully living with family, living with others, or keeping our door open is helping us to stay in touch with our community and our neighbors, not just our family, our churches. We really are supposed to live in community. So I'm really blessed and thankful that God has given us so many opportunities to learn how to work that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And it sounds like you're doing a great job, a fabulous job.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to keep perspective. As Americans, especially people in America, I know there's people in other countries that listen too, but especially in America and around the world, there is a lot of prosperity, and it's such a blessing from God. But oftentimes when we have prosperity, we get used to it.
Yes.
And we expect it. And instead of recognizing what a blessing it is and just continually being thankful, we expect it and want more. Or we're bothered if something changes our comfortable circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important to remember perspective. And it's helpful when you study or read books of the past, history, knowing history, reading books, historical accounts of what life was like in the prairie days, or whatever, your favorite genre is. We have come so far. We are so blessed. And remembering that can really make a difference on how you perceive things that are happening in your house, or, discomforts and irritations and things like that can really melt away when you have your mind focused on being thankful and grateful.
Absolutely. We have so much to be grateful for. And even not just history, but even other places in the world right now. And I mean, I grew up a good Baptist, so I knew all about all the kids in Africa. And I don't mean to be silly about that. I mean, yes, there are third world countries that have very little, but my eyes were opened when I went to a friend's wedding in Sweden many years ago. And these people were very affluent. They had a lot, but a family of 3 grew up in an apartment with 1 bedroom, and the kids all slept on kind of the den, kind of an extra space off the small living room. And it was, I think, 7 stories up. And that was perfectly normal. These were well-to-do people that just don't have as much square footage as we have especially in the American West, but all over America. So we have so much that we think is normal, and then we start thinking it's our due. That everybody, God's blessing means I'll have 2,000 square feet on a quarter acre with a garden, and what an incredible blessing if you have that. But that's not the blessing of God. That's not proof that God loves you. So proof that God loves you is that you wake up every morning and your heart beats and your breath keeps going. And somebody else says something nice to you, and it's pretty incredible to walk in fellowship. So
you're not told in the Bible that you will have a mansion with a pool and a garden and. I mean, it's wonderful if you are given those things, but sure don't cast sidelong glances when God has given it to someone else and not you.
Gratitude.
And think that you've received less in some way.
Exactly. Gratitude makes all the difference. And if you've received the blood of Christ, the Son of God, for your sins, I think you have everything.
In the end, none of those things matter, obviously. You can't take any of it with you. And so putting too much emphasis on those things, it's just pointless. And it makes us ungrateful, like we've said.
Yeah.
So perspective.
So we're getting very serious.
We're digging deep before we go into the fun parts and all the great stories. Just as another side note for kids, I think there's lots of different ways parents do this. It could be music lessons, but I recently was listening to a young man, and he was talking about the reason that he loves athletics. And this could be sports, or could be maybe exercise, difficult exercise, or like I said, music lessons, or just training yourself to do something. But the reason he was saying that he really liked athletics is because it trained him to stop expecting comfort all the time. Like it pushed him outside of his comfort zone. And it kind of made me think about what you were talking about when you were talking about just having people in your home constantly. This is not a dinner and they leave.
Right. No, they stay for weeks or months or a year.
Yeah. And it was just an interesting thought that I kind of pondered over. And my son goes to Logos. And of course, when he's on the football team, it's hard, and track is coming up, and it's going to be hard, grueling practices sometimes. And the whole point is to push yourself to be excellent, and then, of course, to support the team and to make the team overall hopefully achieve championships.
Right.
And just to give their very best. But comfort is not a part of that. You're not comfortable. You're going to sweat. You're going to hurt. Your muscles are going to ache. And in the end, you love it. And you're so glad that you did it, and your body's stronger, and you won a championship, or you won the race, or whatever. And so getting away from us feeling comfortable too. So we're talking about things and gratitude and gratefulness. But I think hand in hand with that is we also expect to be really comfortable all the time.
Yes.
And so it is a blessing when we are. If we're all curled up in bed and the house is cozy and we get a chance to have our hot tea and our book and whatever your perfect little scene is.
That's a pretty perfect scene.
Yeah. There are moments like that, and we do need rest and we do need downtime, but to expect comfort all the time in our lives, and kind of at most moments, that's just not reality. And I think that expectation of comfort can also lead to the irritations.
We see our house as kind of, isn't it that sanctuary where I get away from everything and I'm safe and, like you said, cozy, comfortable. I can let my hair down. I'm done working, whether that's a man's response after being, hard at work all day and I want to come home, and the classic put my slippers on image. But the message, that's not the truth. There's work at home. Home is another place that God has given us to glorify Him. There's hard work at home if we're raising little children to love the Lord and to know truth. There's hard work at home if we're caring for an aging grandparent or parent and wanting to respect the years that they've served God, and so do whatever they need done to take care of them. There's work at home every day to, parent, I guess, moms more than anybody. I cooked that food and you ate it and it's all over the table and some's on the floor and now I have to clean it up and then I have to wash the dishes and then I'm going to do it again.
Right.
How soon? So it's putting our hands to the labor that the Lord gives us, and that doesn't go away at home. Mm-hmm. So that element of my home is my sanctuary, especially sometimes we get to certain ages and the American dream still kind of tells us, oh, you're done with that now. My husband used to say, Christians don't retire.
That's right.
You serve God.
God put work in front of you until the end.
Exactly. Every day is a gift, but they're all from God. And so we turn around and give them back to the Lord.
6 days. Isn't there a Bible verse that says 6 days you shall labor until you're 65?
I'm wondering if that's in like the new
That was in Philippians too.
Or
Second Philippians. That's it.
Second Philippians.
Second Philippians. I remember when I had 5, and they're pretty close in age. The first 4 especially are little stair steps. And then Max is about 5 years younger than Lex. And I remember when they were all kind of in those middle school years. And I taught at their school, worked at their school, it was a smaller school, so just pick a job. And I had done it at their school and went to school with them all day. It got to the point where instead of packing individual lunches for 6 people, I just carried a cooler bag. It was hilarious. Came home, 3:30, drag in the door, and then my second job started.
Exactly. What's for dinner?
Homework and cleaning that wasn't done during the morning because I was gone all day, and what's for dinner. And then, all the moms out there know their routine. Okay. And I had to quickly recognize somewhere in there, I probably had a few days of attitude adjustments. But I had to recognize in there, my whole perspective changed when I didn't have the idea, I'm coming home and I'm done. My day job's over. I just finished work.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. And that's not where God had me either. I didn't come home to an empty house. God gave me so many blessings to now continue working with.
They're all there.
They're all
with
there.
You, and they still need more. And yeah.
So when I changed that perspective and stopped thinking a certain way, I think we often think false things. We make up a narrative in our mind, and it's just something we made up. And then that makes us so discontent. So anyway, I remember having to have that perspective shift of like, nope, job's not over. Maybe at 9 o'clock at night when you crawl into bed. If it happens to be 9, 10, 11. The older they get, the later it can be. But it's less difficult in the middle part of the day.
They both, every stage, I think, had its difficulties.
Yes.
I don't know that 2-year-olds are harder than 16-year-olds.
It's just different.
They're just different.
Now, on almost 18-year-old, I'm not having to do homework or clean up after him or do bath and bedtime. But 11 o'clock at night, he might come in ready to do a science presentation at the foot of my bed. Mom, I need to do a presentation. I need to practice. Are you serious? Do you know what time it is?
Just because you seem to have boundless energy doesn't mean Mom does.
I'm exhausted.
Oh, no.
I'll try to pay attention.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, moving on back to you talking about perspective of having overnight guests. That does seem overwhelming. Not an overnight guest, but really you're talking about long-term having people move into your home. So talk a little bit more about that. Like, who would you recommend that to? Would you say that everyone's called to do that? Or would you say if that circumstance is presented to you, you would say that someone should do that? Or give me some tips on your perspective on that.
Sure, glad to. I definitely think the level of hospitality or having people live with us on a regular basis is not the norm that is expected of every Christian. I think that's a gift that the Lord gave us and a calling that went with my husband's ministry. And he's protected us through it and provided for us through it. I do think, though, that there is a level of hospitality that everybody is called to. And I guess my thought would be, if there is some sort of emergency, if you hear that if there was someone at church, a visiting teacher, and their hotel flooded, would you be able to provide something for one night without it upending your life? And I do mean, if that means sleeping bags on the living room floor, I guess there's some sense of, are we willing to open our doors, not just our tables and our refrigerators, but open our doors and let somebody share our home if it was necessary? And I think every Christian family should consider that and think about how they can do that. So I guess that would be my bottom line about being willing to really entertain the strangers or the unaware kind of idea. I think it's more than dinner. Rarely in our world, but it might happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Letting go of the idea of perfectionism is probably
you would
key.
have to. Yeah. And I do think, maybe you would evolve from, we have an emergency spot. The kids will give up their bedroom and we'll put fresh sheets on the bed if there's somebody in dire straits or if there's an emergency, to we now have a guest room, and we might be willing to give that guest room to somebody for a week or for a more, a longer extended time if that need arose. So I think you would grow in it if you felt like you were called to more of it. But I guess I would really say that, can I pull out an emergency meal, and can I pull out an emergency sleeping bag and pillow if somebody needs us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great ideas. Let's go to a menu.
Yeah.
Speaking of having people in your home long term, you're going to be serving lots and lots and lots of dinners. Mm-hmm. So what is something you might serve to not just you and your husband, but to a pile of guests? It could be a favorite meal, a whole menu.
Sure.
What would you put on the table?
I have changed many things over the years, and I love how the American diet changes. Some things were really popular 15 years ago that we're not allowed to eat anymore. But we have really settled on the joys and wonders of pork shoulder. A pretty significant piece, or we'll cut it up into smaller chunks and keep a lot of pork shoulder in the freezer as we are able. I rotate that now. I came up with an American barbecue pulled pork style. We love traditional carnitas, kind of just a simply seasoned Mexican pork shoulder. And my favorite is a Cuban seasoned mojo pork. I think that's how it's called. So it's very citrusy. It has a lot of garlic and orange and lime in it. But all three of those take similar ingredients. A big piece of pork shoulder shredded up, a huge pot of rice, beans if I have them convenient. But you can feed a lot of people a lot of yummy food with pork and rice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what we do. We do it if we have a big gathering. We do it occasionally just on our regular Sunday dinners and rotate through it. And that's sort of simplified how to prepare for a group, but still give us some variety.
Yes.
And everybody, if you got meat and rice and then you have condiments and all the good things on the side, you also are usually covering all the allergies or sensitivities. Somebody can usually find something they can eat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's worked really well for us.
Yeah. Do you have to have a slow cooker for these recipes, or do you cook them low and slow in the oven?
I use a slow cooker and I use an Instant Pot, but pretty much all of the pork shoulder recipes will give you the three options: Dutch oven in the oven, slow cooker, or the Instant Pot. Mm-hmm. Just something kind of that low and slow is going to make it more tender and flavorful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you serve on the side?
We always have rice. We tend to have beans, and I usually make some kind of a coleslaw.
Okay.
Anything from like the American style coleslaw with the barbecue, pulled pork, to a very spicy jalapeno coleslaw. We don't do that too often for the crowd, or sort of a lighter, fruity coleslaw with just the different things. So sometimes you're going to put it right onto your pork and rice and make it into a taco. Sometimes rice bowls, tacos. We'll serve tortillas, cheese, onions, usually some sour cream, some homemade salsa or some fresh salsa, and a pile of tortillas are nearby. And that just seems to meet the needs.
That sounds delicious.
It's fun. People can kind of season it the way they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We enjoy those. The Cuban is still our favorite. And if there's leftovers, we make Cubano sandwiches later in the week. And then everybody in the household is really happy.
I can imagine. Do you have to have anything extra for the sandwiches? Do you have a special kind of bread?
It's a pretty special sandwich. Yeah, we don't buy Cuban bread. We can't buy it around here. So we try to make a soft French bread or make a soft roll. But that's a planned meal. That takes cheese. I think it's Swiss cheese, ham slices, and dill pickles. Have you ever had a Cubano?
I thought I had, but now it doesn't sound familiar. I don't know that I have.
Okay. Roasted or pulled pork with the ham, the cheese, the pickles, grilled on this crispy, soft bread.
That sounds amazing.
And the sauce is always kind of like a mayonnaise mustard mix. I'm not a big sandwich person, but that one is so good.
Okay, we're going to have the recipe for this too.
Okay, Cubano's coming.
If I was going to make this recipe, I would make sure that I made extra just so I could have the Cubanos.
Yeah, they're really good.
Sounds really good, especially for summertime.
Yes, yeah.
Serve them with chips or chips and fruit or chips and coleslaw or something like that.
It's a warm, gooey, melty grilled sandwich, so everybody loves it. I think year round. It's just the planned leftovers,
Sure.
You just want to make sure watch that bowl of pork and make sure it doesn't all go away.
Right. Oh, that sounds amazing. Okay, well, all of these recipes we will post on comeoverfordinner.com. So look there. I will put it under her blog post under recipes and also on the index where you can look alphabetically or by category and then alphabetically so that you can find all of these things and make it in your own home. Before we move forward, a big thank you to the sponsors for supporting today's episode. Are you searching for hands-on activities to help your kids explore the practical side of science? Look no further than your kitchen. Inquisicook blends food science and culinary arts into an engaging program that puts delicious food on the family table. Let Inquisicook do the teaching with lesson videos, reliable recipes, and assessment tools that put students on track for success. Their online platform is easy to navigate and optimized for mobile, so the learning experience can move from the classroom to the kitchen without a hitch. Inquisicook turns curious students into intuitive cooks, not just recipe followers. Say goodbye to the tyranny of the ingredients list and say hello to utilizing what's in season, what's on sale, or what's in the fridge. Visit inquisicook.com to view sample lessons, then check out the recipe gallery to see just how crave-worthy science can be. Today's culture shifts like sand, but New St. Andrews College is established on Christ, the immovable rock. The college is a premier institution that forges evangelical leaders who don't fear or hate the world. Guided by God's Word, equipped with the genius of classical liberal arts and God-honoring wisdom, with a faculty dedicated to academic rigor into God's kingdom, New St. Andrews College offers an education that frees people. To find out more, visit nsa.edu. If you were going to serve dessert, what would you serve?
I don't have favorites because I'm just
so many.
I'm so bad at variety. Mm-hmm. I'm always drawn to something new.
Yes.
But if it's a crowd, I do like some big sheet pan cookies. There's like a snickerdoodle or sugar cookie bar cookie, and they're soft and chewy, and you can make a whole bunch on a quarter sheet pan.
That would be really fast and easy.
They're great. That's what I like about them. And you can skip the cinnamon. I mean, like I said, there's the snickerdoodle one that people really like, the cinnamon sugar topping, but the plain sugar cookie, put some sprinkles on that. And it's just simple and homemade and feeds a lot of people. So those are popular.
Speaking about having people in your home and cooking, when you do have long-term guests, which I know it's your daughter-in-law right now, and it probably is a bit easier to work with family. But you've had ladies you mentioned that were pregnant and other circumstances.
Right.
How do you do the cooking? Do you feel like you are the cook, the chef, the maid, the everything? Or how do you pull people into your daily life where it's not that you're assigning adult chores, but are you kind of talking about who's going to clean the bathroom and who's going to cook the meal this night and who's going to clean up? How does that work?
We do. We have. Every circumstances has probably been a little bit different. So there's been times when someone is there or you're in someone's house and you're there because they're needy and you just are getting the grace from God to do everything that needs to be done.
Right.
But when you're having healthy people live with you, there usually is some assignment of chores, mostly being responsible for yourself and keeping your spaces clean. After we've had somebody, most of the ladies, after they'd been around a little bit, they took on some cooking chores pretty willingly. But I am definitely the meal planner, whether that's a good thing or not. I probably like control. and it's just easiest for one person to plan for budgeting and grocery shopping purposes and things like that. We've had an incredibly unique situation the last 3 years living with my daughter-in-law, or our daughter-in-law living with us, because she's a good cook too. And we've both had seasons where we needed help and seasons where we were really strong. And so she had a baby. I did a lot more cooking. I had a busier season at work. I do work out of the home 3 and 4 days a week. So there's times when she's doing the dinners. So for us, it's a dance. It really is like a finely tuned, amazing dance that the Lord gives each of us strength to help one another out. So yeah, we share cooking right now, but there's times when it was necessary and I just did what needed to be done.
Right. With the menu you mentioned, do you have any particular shortcuts or time savers that you do to get it on the table quickly?
I do. Probably my favorite shortcut is an ingredient. I love Trader Joe's. Am I allowed to say that? Green salsa, or their jarred salsa verde. It's a 12-ounce glass jar.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay. That ingredient is in our pantry. And if you need to season something Mexican or chili, any of the carnitas or the Cuban pork, that little jar goes a long way to making life easier.
I'm adding that to my Trader Joe's list because I'm not sure I've seen it, but I'm not sure I've actually picked it up and bought it.
We use it to make green enchiladas. It's just
it's delicious.
It's delicious. It tastes fresh and green and not too spicy. It's just a really nice balance. And so
I will add that to my must-have list because I have a few items that are definitely a must-have when I drive to Trader Joe's.
Yeah. It's also an ingredient, I was going to say, kind of if I really need a really quick meal, I have in my back pocket white chicken chili. Everybody probably knows about one. Everybody probably makes one. But we have a recipe that we love. It's gluten-free. It's dairy-free. You can make it fresh, but I have found ingredients that I can make a big pot of that chili entirely with canned foods. And I try to keep those canned foods in the pantry. I can literally open cans, dump it into a soup pot or a crock pot and put it on low, and it makes a delicious pot of chili that everybody seems to like.
That will also be posted, listeners.
Yep. I have given...
I'm going to be texting her. I need this recipe. Oh, and I also need this one. And I need this one. Oh, remember you mentioned that chili? You're going to send me that one too.
That one's written down. I have literally given a box of all of the canned ingredients with a recipe card to like a newlywed or somebody who's sick. They can cook it when they want. Mm-hmm. And it really does taste good.
That is so much fun. That is perfect to have all those things in your pantry for in a, air quotes, emergency.
Right.
Whether it's a true emergency or not, but just an unexpected guest or extra guests. Or, all of a sudden there's a snowstorm and you can't get out to go to the grocery store like you thought. Well, there's dinner right there. Yeah. That's a wonderful recipe to have. What about your best prep tip? Do you have any things that you would recommend as far as like a shopping, cleaning, or menu planning type tip?
The two things that I do is my best prep tip is meal planning. And I have to plan. We have a busy life, and I listen to other podcasts in this town, and I talk to other people. Everybody's busy. So my husband helped me actually, because I used to love variety. I would never make a meal plan. I'd always look for new recipes and try new things, but that got exhausting.
Takes a lot of time.
It does. It does. And so we kind of came together with some of his favorite meals. We made a meal rotation. So I use categories. There's crock pot, pasta, stir fry, Mexican, make ahead, and kind of things. And then we put 5 or 6 of our favorite meals under each category. So then I just go to this little chart or spreadsheet now and mix it up. And I can plan 2 weeks worth of meals without a lot of rotation, without a lot of repetition, but not have to constantly be searching for new meals. And I think my family really appreciates it when I serve something and they're like, oh, this is my old favorite. I'm so glad to see it again.
Right. It's not coming up in 6 months.
It's not. It's coming up every month or every 2 months. And it's really nice. And it's been really helpful for me.
Well, you can do it on autopilot when you're busy. You work outside the home, you mentioned. It's just something you can quickly make a menu or grocery shopping list from. And the thing with working within a meal plan or a meal rotation is you can look at your chart, let's say it's 2 weeks, and if you have a day, say a Saturday, that you know you're going to have extra time, well, you could put a brand new meal in there.
Absolutely.
You know, you have looked on the internet and seen this new recipe. Well, you could add some things in, but it doesn't have to be every single
It doesn't.
night
It's
of the
not a
week.
law. It's a guideline. And it's, like you said, it's saving so much time and mental time, that mental brain area, that just, what am I making for dinner? And so to know that we've picked things that everybody likes, that everybody can eat, and we can rotate through them. It just takes a lot of pressure off. And yeah, exactly. So there's a free Saturday. Well, let's do something fun and exciting with a new recipe, but we don't have to do that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other thing that's helpful about the meal rotation, if you have other people cooking and you have standard recipes or a standard recipe book that they can easily access, and they know that tonight is pulled pork tacos or whatever, they may have even made it before.
They've seen it before. They've probably made it before.
The recipe's right there, and so they can jump in and help or make it if it's their turn to cook.
Yeah, it's been great to do that. The rest, like you said, the grocery list practically makes itself, because all of those recipes have been put into some grocery list at some point, and so it's really easy to work that way. Yeah, no, we really love it. The prep tip, I'm going to say it was probably 3 years ago, maybe more, when they start sending people AARP and other magazines, whether you want them or not.
That's when you feel really old.
Yeah. Well, we found a different one, not AARP. It's AMAC, but that doesn't matter. They had an article in there about working smarter, not harder. And I know that sometimes my back hurts or my hands hurt a little bit. You could be young and have them hurting depending on what you've done all day. Mm-hmm. And so it was just kind of this fun little article that was talking about the different tools in the kitchen that can take some of the labor away. And so I had to rethink that, because I was sort of like, oh, you need minimal and you need a good knife and a good cutting board and you can do everything. Well, now I'm not so sure.
Now you're adding a few things to your
list.
I
actually bought a power electric can opener, but the tool I love is my traditional food processor. Mm-hmm. It's a full-size food processor, and I have let it do more work for me now in the last few years than I used to do. So I cut pastry, butter, and flour together with my food processor, and I pretty much chop all the veggies in the food processor. And I just find that is giving me I can put my energies on things that matter more. So I am not against a good food processor.
Do you have a favorite brand?
I don't. I dream of a Cuisinart, and I have an old Hamilton Beach.
And it works.
Yes. Get a full-size one, though. I would definitely say that.
Yeah, the mini choppers can be handy if you have a real small family, but or if you often are doing, say, a little bit at a time, or garlic or something. But usually if you're cooking for more than a couple of people, you do want the full size.
Yeah, and it does the pastry things better and all that good stuff. So it's like at least I have one tool that's doing a lot of things, and it's using its manpower instead of me.
And they can go in the dishwasher, top shelf,
Yes.
if you have a dishwasher. My favorite recommended item is a dishwasher. And there are some people out there, of course, who don't have dishwashers. And I'm not putting those people down because, space constraints, or it wasn't built into their kitchen. But if at all possible, I do recommend for those people a portable dishwasher. Since moving to Moscow, I have become privy to these things. There's different areas of the United States. Houses are built different.
Yes.
In Moscow, it's a college town. Multiple universities and colleges. There's New St. Andrews College, University of Idaho, and then down the road is the Washington State University. So thousands of college kids. So there's a lot of rentals. There's a lot of homes with daylight basements or different types of divisions in their home where they rent to college students. So anyway, all that's to say is I have become more aware of the ways you can wash dishes that do not require a installed dishwasher. And you can buy, if you have space, you can buy a full-size dishwasher, full size, and just plug it up to your kitchen sink, and that's the water source.
I almost need to send you a picture of my kitchen.
Do you have one?
We have a full-size portable dishwasher.
Okay.
Our house is lovely, and it's old, and that kitchen never had a dishwasher, and I don't know where we're going to put it if we ever get to remodel. But we have a full-size portable dishwasher, and it rolls over to the sink every night and gets plugged in. And it is the most wonderful thing.
It is the most wonderful thing. It saves so much time. Yeah. It saves so much energy and water. If you go online, I don't have these facts memorized, but I've looked them up before. But if you go online and look, just a quick search, hand washing versus running a dishwasher. Right. It is literally like something like 3 gallons or 5 gallons to 20 something gallons. I mean, it's just the difference is you use so much more water with hand washing and time and labor. Well, time and labor, I guess, are the same thing. But I've had people say, well, they won't wash as good. They do. They're actually an actual dishwasher. The only difference is that normally it's plumbed into a home, like
correct.
An installed
there's plumbing
one
under the sink or in the cabinets that you can't see.
Right.
And so there's a water feed and a water drain.
And the only difference is that the tubing that comes out the back is just hooked up to your sink, the hose, and so then that's the water in, and then it has a separate thing for water out, or I don't know if it's separate, but
they're on the same hose, but the two hoses are connected. It's one hookup, and then you have to plug it in because it's not permanently attached to your wiring. We actually had a used one that we picked up when we first moved into our house 4 years ago, and it lasted for almost 3 years. And then we had to buy a new one. And it was not $100. It was a lot more, but I'm still going to say it was worth every penny.
It's worth every penny.
And it's stainless steel lined, just like a newer dishwasher, and it scrubs, and it does everything that a dishwasher does, and it's fantastic. So yes, it's an investment, but if you are having people over, if you have a family, if you just are a busy person, like you just said, it uses 5-6 gallons of water instead of 20 gallons of water. Portable dishwashers, if you can find a place in the kitchen for it, it's definitely something seriously to look into.
Yes. Yeah. And they roll. So even if you have to have it in a different place instead of in front of your sink, you can roll it up to your sink like you said you do at night, move it back out of the way. Some people may have a spot for it, but there are the ones that are stainless steel lined, which I would recommend. But we actually have one right now where we are that's the plastic lined, I guess. I don't know what the other's called. One guest on here a long time ago, she mentioned that they had gotten rid of theirs because it had a mold problem. Ours never has. And so I don't know how to speak to hers. I don't know if she inherited it like that and it just needed to be gone. It was way too old or somebody else hadn't taken care of it. But ours has never, ever had any sort of thing like that. But I would say if you have one, just like any other dishwasher or a front-loading washing machine, you are supposed to leave the door cracked. And,
probably,
you know, like to let the dishes dry. Like if you kept something closed and it's moist for days on end, then possibly something could arise. But that's never been a problem for us. So anyway, I would highly recommend one. And then just going deep diving into this, I have also seen I actually have never used one of these, but for smaller spaces, like say a college apartment or dorm room or something like that, where maybe you have even less space, there are countertop dishwashers. If it was as one person or maybe roommates, you can get little countertop ones that would wash, and they tell you what it would hold, so many place settings, so many plates, so many cups, so many forks, and it does this little quick wash up on your countertop. So anyway, it's an option, especially if you're hosting people. It saves so much time, and it makes it more doable than facing a mountain of dishes when they all leave.
Right.
And you're just like, wow, this hand washing is going to take hours.
God has given us some really smart mechanics and engineers who've created some really nice things, haven't they?
They really have. It's worth it. Look for a sale or look for a used one in this town, because that's how we found ours. Is there was actually someone in the church who was selling it, which was such a blessing. We actually bought it for our daughter-in-law and son who had just gotten married, because they moved into an older type home, and it was never built for a dishwasher.
Right.
We're like, well, you need a dishwasher. So we bought it for them.
It's a very nice gift.
Yes. Then they moved, and the place they moved to had a dishwasher, and then we happened to move and we didn't have a dishwasher. So would that be weird to have? Can we get that back? So anyway,
I love it.
Okay, so that's my recommended item.
Very good.
Do you have any advice for making people feel welcome when they come into your home?
We have a very sweet, very fluffy dog at our house, and he's never met a person he didn't like. This is probably not something everybody needs to do, so it's just really easy for me. He greets people at the door, and he's the best icebreaker we have.
What kind of dog is he?
He's a miniature Australian Shepherd, so he's about the size of a beagle, but he's very fluffy, and we love him, and he loves everybody. He's safe around babies, and he's a joy. So honestly, he's just the icebreaker. People come in and they have to say hi to him.
They might forget to greet you.
They might forget to greet us. But I actually think it might have been on Come Over for Dinner or another talk with Christian women about hospitality. Somebody really did mention the idea of leaving some kitchen or table job sort of undone and leaving something for your guests to put their hand to. It's just a really comforting way to say, yes, you're welcome. And would you like to light the candles? Or I have a few more linens to put on the table. Or stir the gravy. Having something where you invite them not just into your home, but into your life in just the littlest way. I've started doing that years ago after I heard that advice, because I was probably a little too focused on having everything perfect.
Same.
And then I'm not the most relaxed hostess for a few minutes, So,
well, and then if you forget something, I have forgotten the napkins before, I panic. And I've thought later, after everybody was gone, why didn't I just get the napkins out and hand it to someone else?
Right.
And just say, oh, I forgot the napkins. Do you mind putting them around the table? Instead, I'm panicking and grabbing the napkins and trying to, hurry and put out napkins while, run back in the kitchen and stir the pot. You're right. I could have easily handed that to one of the guests.
Well, having somebody wiser, I don't know who it was, older or younger, say, do it on purpose. Leave something for your guests to do so that you're not giving that impression that you're perfect and, have everything Martha Stewart perfect. And also that you're inviting them to work side by side or to be side by side with you. And I think that's just so wise, and it's so warm and welcoming. So that's what we do now.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
What are some of the tasks that you leave? You mentioned maybe napkins.
Pouring the water into water glasses, napkins, lighting candles, putting the bread into the bread basket. So I don't want them to feel like they have to walk in and cook and their expertise is needed, or if they don't want to cut something with a sharp knife, they don't have to. But yeah, I think some of those last minute things, even if I just have put together the pickles and the olives or, a little relish tray and set it on the table, I'll have them sitting out. So those kind of things that really don't involve cooking, but they do involve important little details that make the meal nice.
Well, and some of those are better done at the last minute. Like if you had warm bread, for instance.
Yes, the bread just came out of the oven. Exactly. Lighting candles is really great. And I think you don't want them lit too early. So when the guests actually arrive is a good time to light the candles. Yeah.
Do you have any other prep tips?
The one I've been working on more recently is to gather all of my ingredients before I start cooking. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm 5 feet tall and my cabinets are not 5 feet tall. They're 8 feet tall. So I've just found that it speeds up my preparation if I'm not having to walk to the refrigerator and walk to the pantry 3 or 4 times. It may look a little messier at first, but boy, does it help with preparation. So gather all of your ingredients before you start cooking. And I think that just will help you to kind of go through it more smoothly.
When you go to clean up, do you actually kind of stock everything over to the side and put everything back all at once? Or do you put things away as you go?
I clean as I go, unless it's like the refrigerator ingredients. If there's 3 or 4 of those, yes, I'll make one trip to the refrigerator. But I do sort of clean as I go. Once I'm done with a pile of ingredients, if I can get them out of my way, I'll put them away. Yeah.
Well, at that point, something's simmering or sizzling, or you kind of have
something's chopped
something
and sauteing.
going.
You've got a couple minutes or at least 45 seconds to put some groceries away, and that works really well. I do try to clean as I go a little bit. Yeah.
That kind of saves you in the end from having to do too much cleaning.
Yep.
What is your must-have kitchen item and where can we find it? I think you've already mentioned one that we must have.
I think I jumped the gun. It's definitely, I mean, I have found I'm going with the food processor.
The food processor. And I second that.
Yeah, and learning how to use it for more than just chopping onions, I think has been my the good challenge, the fun challenge. I have a biscuit recipe that specifically says how to make that dough in a food processor. And I'm sure there's cooks out there who would just be rolling over in their graves if they heard me say that.
No, I have done that for years. Ina
Great.
Garten, I think she has a Cuisinart, but on her cooking show years ago when I was young, I watched her cooking shows on Food Network, and she actually was the one that taught me how to do that. And
Great.
I have made scones and biscuits and anything you need to cut your butter into.
Exactly.
And make it like that crumb or pea type texture. It does it really, really quickly instead of you using a pastry cutter.
Right.
Which takes, of course, a lot of extra time and
a lot of wrist
manpower
action.
and strength. That's great if you love doing it that way. I have not done it that way in years.
I'm so thrilled to hear that. I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And I do. I love to make scones and biscuits and all those good things. And yeah, anytime I'm doing that now, even the pie crusts, we're doing it in the food processor.
Yeah, same. I mean, if I had a really tiny batch, I'm sure I have used a pastry cutter because I have one, and I remember having used it sort of recently. But I often don't make a real small batch of anything. Usually, I'm doubling
What's the
it
point
or
of making a
tripling
small
it.
batch? If you're going to if you're a small family, make a double batch and you don't have to make them again 2 days later. So.
I know. Even with just one son at home, we often have company or I'm freezing it for later. Like if you make scones, well, let's just make a double batch and either he can take some to school or we're having company the next day or I can put them in the freezer. I often am making more than what I want to do with my wrists and hands with a pastry cutter. I am taking advantage of that food processor.
It's a great tool. Yeah.
Good recommendation. So do you have a story for us from all your years of hospitality, or is it just kind of all a blur? Because when you have people in your home, honestly, it's just one day turns into the next.
I think that's probably more true of us, that I don't have a funny story or a horrific story that sticks out. I'm sure those things happened, but I think of just all of the years and the precious memories and the opportunities that God's given us. And they're just these snapshots of, some of them were sad when they happened, but they bring joy now, seeing God's faithfulness. So I guess I will invite my family members to comment. They might have funny stories, but I can't remember a one. I just remember the people that have come and gone, and God's allowed us to love on them.
Well, when you do it so often,
maybe
that may be part of it, because a lot of times some of the stories that I think of somebody coming in for dinner and then leaving. And I was horrified because I did something terribly wrong, or, a recipe went awry, or something like that.
Yeah.
But year after year, you doing it day after day, and especially long-term guests, I bet it would just all kind of run together.
It's just life.
And it's just life.
It's meals and life and sharing it with other people. I'm sure there's been successful, amazing, fancy meals. And there's been that one we don't have to make again.
Right. Or disasters you laughed at and then you moved on to the next day.
Yeah. But I just remember the people.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And that's the most important thing.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Lori, for joining me. It's been so much fun to hear your take on hospitality and to hear how you do it and all of your encouragement, especially to do hospitality or to be aware of hospitality that might include a long-term stay.
Thank you for listening.
Until next time, bye for now.